We have sinuses in our skull. And so you probably heard of people having a sinus infection or inflammation of the sinuses, which is called sinusitis. And so when we look at what these structures are, these are generally in the bone and they are hollow spaces that are lined with mucous membranes. So hollow spaces lined with a mucous membrane. These have a few different functions. One is it helps to humidify the air. Humidifies air. And it also filters the air. So it actually also warms the air. So as we breathe in, some of the air that we're breathing in goes into these sinuses, and then that helps to filter the substances that are in the air out of the air. So normally they're hollow, but sometimes they can get excessive amounts of mucus in them. And sometimes bacteria, for example, can get in there and cause an infection. The sinuses do need to be able to drain. And when we think about sinuses, it's very interesting because one of the reasons why humans have more problems with their sinuses than other animals that are quadrupeds is that when we stand upright, there is no real way for stuff to move out of the sinuses. So it's very interesting. If you go to a sinus doctor, sometimes they recommend that you irrigate your sinuses, which is where you might use a neti pot or one of those squeezy bottles, and you put warm salt water up into your sinuses and they go into the sinuses and then they drain out of the sinuses. So that warm water flushes your sinuses. One of the things that's very interesting about this is if you turn your head down, then the water will come back out your nose. And so the way that we are positioned just simply makes it difficult for our sinuses to drain properly. The other thing that it does is it serves as a resonating chamber for our voice. So you might have heard of people having more of a nasal resonation, right? So they have a nasal voice, and that is where they might be relying upon the sinuses to project their voice. So rather than the chest, for example, as being using to project the voice, or the throat to project the voice, they might use their nose. I can't do it, but they might use their nose. And so when those become blocked, that is going to change the way that your voice sounds, right? So it's a resonating chamber for your voice. Okay, so let's look at these interesting sinuses. So the sinuses that you might be most aware of are the ones that are right close to your nose. And these are called the ethmoid sinuses because they're in the ethmoid bone. And they include all these tiny little air spaces. So when people have sinus surgery, this is where they go up and into your nose and up in here, and then they remove all the little partitions and they make one big chamber. And so this is going to prevent chronic nasal congestion and chronic sinus pain. So sinus surgery is the ethmoid sinuses. When we look at some of the other sinuses, we can see that the largest of our sinuses are actually in the maxilla. So the maxilla is the upper jaw. So this is the maxillary sinus right here. Again, this is my ethmoid sinus right there. And then this is my frontal sinus. So this would be up near my eyebrows. So there is a sinus within your frontal bone. There is also a very large group of sinuses in really deep in the skull. So if we look at another diagram here, this shows behind the ethmoid sinuses, these are the sphenoid sinuses. So again, these are generally not filled with stuff, but they have a lining, a mucus lining, moist, that helps to humidify, helps to filter the air, and also warm the air as we breathe it in. It also, these sinuses, especially this large one, right? This one would make the skull lighter than it would normally be if it was just simply solid bone.